Then on Sports Central, we go over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the West Virginia Mountaineers, the team that went 5-7 overall in the 2022 season. This is definitely a team that's in a bit of a rebuild phase right now, having 5 wins last year. How is this team going to be in 2023, and what can you expect out of West Virginia in the 2023 season? That's what we'll be talking about here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predicting their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. Once again, the record being 5-7, and really from the start, it was just a disappointing season. The 2 tough losses to start out the year to Pitt and then Kansas. I mean, the Pitt loss really was not bad. Lost that game by the touchdown, and Pitt, of course, being a team that was in the New Year's Six in 2021. But the Kansas loss, kind of a different story. Kansas was expected to be terrible once again in 2022, as they always are, but it turns out Kansas actually had a pretty good season for them, and I mean, so that loss kind of aged well, I would say, in a way, even though at the time it was ugly. But did lose to them 55-42, a shootout there. Came back the next week, beat Towson 65-7, beat Virginia Tech on the road 33-10. Then lost to Texas on the road by 18. Came back after the bye and beat Baylor 43-40. And then a couple of ugly losses here. Lost to Texas Tech 48-10. Lost to TCU by 10. And then lost to Iowa State on the road big. So those 3 losses really were, that was kind of where this team hit rock bottom. And they'd beat Oklahoma then on the 12th of November 23-20. Nice win there. Lost to K-State, then beat Oklahoma State by 5 to finish out the regular season. So 5-7 was the final record. This wasn't, I mean, it was definitely a disappointing season, but this wasn't a terrible team last year. We saw this team show glimpses of potential, and even though there were a lot of close and disappointing losses, I mean, in the end, this is still a team that, I mean, showed some potential throughout the season despite it being disappointing. But looking at your returning production heading into the season, this is a team that is going to look a lot different. They're not really retaining a lot of that talent from last season that this team worked with. JT Daniels transferring out. I mean, JT Daniels has been everywhere at this point. He's headed to Rice next. I mean, West Virginia was his 3rd school, and now he's headed to his 4th in Rice. It's pretty insane to follow the journey that he's had. I mean, he was a quarterback that you think back a few years ago. I mean, he was with Georgia, then went to USC. I mean, really, he was considered a potential dark horse Heisman contender at one point, and suddenly, I mean, that's fallen off real quick. I mean, last season, just not too good for him. 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, 9 picks, a 61% completion rate. Just not a great season for him, and it's on to Garrett Green now to be the starter at quarterback for this team, which we've seen him play a little bit. He did pass 78 times last season, had right around 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks, 55% completion rate. Overall, nothing too great out of him, but we'll see what the offseason can do for him. I mean, he also rushed the ball for nearly 300 yards last season and 5 touchdowns, so I mean, he's got some potential, and we haven't seen him play too much, so we'll see if he can bring some life back to this team in 2023. It's very much a possibility. But the backfield, you do lose Tony Mathis, who was your lead back, right around 600 yards last year, but you do return your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the backfield from last season. C.J. Donaldson, Justin Johnson Jr., and then Jalen Anderson. So this backfield's got some pretty good depth. There's not a major standout in there right now, but there's still potential for sure in the backfield for this team. The receiving core, you lose your top 3. So the receiving core especially takes a ton of hits there with Sam James leaving. Same with Bryce Ford-Wheaton, and then Caden Prather. So the receiving core is going to look a lot different. The quarterback situation is kind of a question mark. This is an offense that there's a lot of uncertainty around looking forward to 2023. Defensively, lose 3 on the D-line, 2 linebackers, and then 2 in the secondary. So, I mean, this defense is going to look a lot different too. I mean, consider the transfer portal. This team really hasn't added significant players that are guaranteed starters in 2023, especially for the defense. I mean, Devin Carter is expected to be a wide receiver 1 in 2023. He's coming in from NC State, and Cole Taylor is expected to be a starter at tight end for this team coming in from LSU. But otherwise, you do lose a few key players for sure. I mean, Will Crowder wasn't a key player, but he is headed off to Troy. He was a quarterback. Tony Mathis, a key player, off to Houston. Caden Prather off to Maryland. Reese Smith, you lose him as well, off to Liberty. You do bring in Jashawn Polk from Kent State. He's expected to be a wide receiver too. So And also, I mean, Jordan Jefferson, he's off to LSU. You bring in Tyron Bradley, edge rusher from Abilene Christian. You lose Taj Alston off to Colorado. Linnell Carr off to Indiana. Montre Miller's coming in from Kent State. You got, so you do bring in 4 players for the secondary, the defensive secondary from the transfer portal. All 4 of these guys could be starters at some point this season, but they're currently listed in as secondary players on the transfer or on the depth chart. So we'll see what happens there. Recruiting wise, 40th in the country, 8th in the Big 12. Not terrible. He got 2 4-stars coming in and 17 3-stars as well. And I've got this team at a 7 out of 10 on the future forecast meter. I still think the future is bright for this team. You consider the success the team has had over the years. They've been generally a consistent contender in the Big 12. I mean, the past 4 years, not so much, but you consider the past couple decades, this has been a consistent bowl team. I mean, last season wasn't very good, 2019 wasn't very good, but otherwise, this has been a pretty good team. So I still think that there's the potential there for this team to be a consistent contender in the Big 12, especially with Texas and Oklahoma taking off. I mean, the Big 12 is wide open every year. And so, I mean, especially with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, that just makes it even more wide open. So I think there's definitely reason for optimism for this team in the future, even though maybe the past couple of years have been a bit disappointing. But with that, let's take a look into the schedule now for this team. You got Penn State on the road. I mean, it doesn't get much harder than that during week 1. Going on the road, a night game in Happy Valley against Penn State. Not a very familiar opponent at this time. And I mean, Penn State next season is a top 10 team. They're expected to be a national contender. Of course, they're kind of hidden between or behind Michigan and Ohio State, but I mean, Penn State is still a really good football team, so that's going to be tough there in week 1. Then you got Duquesne in week 2 at home. You got Pitt at home in week 3, so you got a couple winnable games there. And then Texas Tech, I mean, that's going to be tough. Texas Tech next season should be a pretty solid team once again. TCU on the road. Then you got your bye. Then you got Houston on the road, Oklahoma State at home, UCF on the road. Then BYU at home to start November. You got Oklahoma on the road, Cincinnati at home, and then Baylor on the road to finish out the regular season. So you're playing all 4 of the Big 12 newcomers in Houston, UCF, BYU, and then Cincinnati. Of course, Pitt and Penn State are on your non-conference schedule. For a West Virginia team that is very much in a rebuild phase right now, this is a brutal schedule. I mean, this is probably this could be the toughest schedule in the Big 12 this season. I mean, Penn State on the road, Pitt, a team that's been a big, consistent contender the past few years in the ACC. I mean, it's going to be a challenge for West Virginia next year. And looking at September, Penn State on the road, I just don't see a way where West Virginia wins this. I mean, what an opportunity. If you can beat Penn State there in a night game on the road to start out the season, I mean, that would be a huge win for this team. I just don't see it happening. I think Penn State is too good of a football team. So you lose to them, then Duquesne at home, you beat them pretty easily. And then Pitt at home. I think you get a pretty nice win here against Pitt in week 3. It's going to be a close game, but I do think you beat Pitt and get a really nice win there. Then Texas Tech at home. I do think you drop that one. That's one that could go either way. You got them at home, but Texas Tech next season should be a pretty solid team. So you're 2-2 heading into the TCU matchup. I think TCU is still a tough team. You do drop that one. Houston on the road. I mean, this is a game where the more I think about it, I do want to take West Virginia. It really could go either way. I think the main reason why I picked Houston there is because they're at home. It's pretty much 50-50 otherwise. But Houston next season should fall off a decent amount. I don't think they're going to be too good. I do think you drop that one. I'm going to take that for Houston right now. It is on a Thursday night as well, something to keep in mind. But that's absolutely a 50-50 game. Could go either way. Oklahoma State and UCF. I think Oklahoma State got them at home. That's also winnable. UCF on the road. That's going to be a tougher one. I do think UCF is a team, I've said this a few times, if any of the Big 12 newcomers will be a contender this season, should be UCF. I do think they're built to win right now, and going to Orlando, that's going to be a tougher one there. So I do think UCF wins that one. But as far as it goes for the second month, Houston and Oklahoma State, definitely winnable games. So I got you at 2-6 heading into November. BYU could be halfway decent in 2023 as well. I'm going to take them to beat the Mountaineers there. Then Oklahoma on the road. I think you drop that one. Norman's a tough place to play. Last season for Oklahoma in the Big 12. I'm going to favor the Sooners there. Then Cincinnati. I do think you beat Cincinnati next season. They should be kind of in a similar situation to West Virginia. So you get a nice win there to in the second to last game, then Baylor on the road. I'm going to take the Bears there. I think Baylor could be decent once again in 2023. So I do have 3-9 for West Virginia. I think this is, this is kind of one of the worst case scenarios for West Virginia as well. I do think this team drops a lot of close games. There's a lot of uncertainty for me with this team. It's just the defense losing so many key players from last season. You're only bringing in a couple of players. None of the players coming from the transfer portal are expected to be starters in 2023. And you consider all of the lost talent, this defense really could be in rough shape. This offense, Garrett Green, we'll see what he can do. But I'm not sure how much optimism there is about him right now. This backfield could be good, but otherwise, this offense just looks like a mess as well. I do have 3-9 for the prediction. Ceiling is 6-6 in case this team surprises. You never know. The Big 12 seems to always produce a big surprise team. So could it be West Virginia? Maybe. I think it's unlikely. I've got 1-11 for the floor. I think you beat Duquesne no matter what. And honestly, 1-11. I can't imagine this team goes 1-11. I think 3 to 4 wins is kind of where I have this team. Maybe 5 if they can get it done in a couple of close games. But in the end, I've got 3-9 for West Virginia, just a team in a rebuild phase right now. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you're a West Virginia fan especially. Do you guys think this could be a good season? Could this team maybe step in the right direction in 2023? I think the future is still good for this team. I just think 2023 is definitely a down year for the Mountaineers. But with that, I do appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.